it's the reality facing a lot of young adults, school leavers, uni leavers, that sort of thing, that they're, because of the cost of living and the cost of accommodation and things like that, well, people are going into share housing and or living at home with family in multi-generational households. There's certainly, I mean, those things have always been around, but they're becoming a lot more common. And the idea that whilst they're trying to study, they're working multiple jobs, generally part-time jobs or casual jobs, and so the ability to secure regular hours can be difficult. The availability of those jobs is not as common as they once were. It takes people many months sometimes of looking to get jobs in the industry or even related to industry. And yeah, this sort of reality is near. Uh, so yeah, it's difficult. I mean, the idea that they're having to pay half of a weekly income. I mean, that's well above the generalized ideal of no more than a third. Well, up to half going on rent. Well, then that hurts your ability to afford to eat, pay bills, live a life. Uh, well, it says that young people are less happy than they were in previous generations. Well, I, I mean, I don't know really. When I think back to my school leaving class, most people studied or found work pretty quick, and the ones that went in to study all were either working part time or were able to move into paid employment not long after. Now, that said, my school leaving class was only like 76 kids. Um, and in order to achieve those outcomes, we almost all left town. We were regional, so we all pretty much moved to the closest city. So even then, there was uh, expectations that so there's an understanding that your expectations had to be adjusted to meet reality. It wasn't going to be possible for everybody to leave school and stay in town and work. There just wasn't the available jobs, or the jobs that were available weren't something a school leaver could pick up. And so, I mean, there were apprentices and things like that, but by and large, we all had to leave and go to the next big city. Now, I'm listening to school leavers and uni leavers now, and they're talking about maybe only a fraction of their friend groups or their peers have secured work, full-time work, and let alone work in a related industry to what they'd studied if they were post-uni. There are some that are more successful than others, but on a more general approach, it seems that there's a lot more struggle to get access to that. And then the same goes for living independently, etc. I mean, there were even pre-pandemic, we were talking to a couple of people who were who'd gone into work after leaving school. I don't think they had a tertiary education, but they were all having to house share because there just wasn't enough money from the available work to afford to live on their own, or as a couple for people who had partners, that sort of thing. Are they feeling better than they did in the past? I don't know. It's certainly cost of living, I think, is the big one. I mean, cost of living has always been an issue, but it certainly feels like it's becoming more of a problem. You can't hide the massive increase in the cost of accommodation, for example. Okay, so 2025 now, the property prices in the last 10 years, let me have a think. 10 years? Yes. Have basically doubled, depending on certain locations. I mean, effectively close to doubled. And so that's what, 10% increase per year. There was a much faster increase. So they basically doubled actually in about 6 years, and then have sort of stagnated for a period and seem to have started taking off again. Because I think there's some natural resistance points in the market. So the resistance point that housing nearby sort of hit is the $1 million mark, where you've got to overcome this reluctance from buyers to spend that amount of money. Eventually it's going to be broken through and prices will carry on again. But there was a house nearby that sold, just an everyday house, sold at $1 million. But I think they, unfortunately, well, good for the vendor, the buyer purchased at the peak of the market in recent years. And so it then spent a couple of years losing a little bit of money, but it's probably back up to where they paid for it, if not a bit better now, and carrying on. Now, $1 million house is what, $1,000 a week rent, even for a family, because it's a 4-bedroom type house. I don't know that you're going to get people willing to pay $1,000 a week rent on a house. Now, I don't know what the current wages and salaries are, but my pay never went up like that. So the whole affordability, whereas I think when I was in the position of these school leavers, you'd be paying, if you paid $350 to $400 a week rent, you'd think that you're paying a lot. In fact, 12 years ago, let's see, what was the rent? We were feeling ripped off at $500 a week rent. Now, the house we were in at the time was valued at $500,000, and I think that's what it sold at when they tossed us out. But yeah, the whole idea of $500 a week rent on a multi-bedroom house felt extortionate sometimes, but you can't find places like that now, and that was only 10 years ago, well, 12 years ago. Not massively long time ago. So it's, yeah, I mean, blaming the baby boomers, I don't know. There's obviously a whinge about infrastructure as well. They haven't built houses at an affordable price. Well, you go back and look at your baby boomers could afford to buy houses at X amount of price and stuff like that. Yeah, they bought smaller houses further out. So the cities have grown larger, so those equivalent locations are well and truly far out. But take Adelaide as an example. Adelaide, where it's spread to now, is a lot more than what it was, say, middle of the 20th century. There was one of the northern suburbs, we'll go north side, Elizabeth was named for Queen Elizabeth. And it was basically a new development in the 50s, I think. Yeah, and it's a lot of smaller houses, relatively large blocks nowadays, but smaller houses, cheaper for the families and stuff to buy in. Now, suburbs like Elizabeth and Salisbury stayed economically depressed and never really developed the value that other suburbs did, but that was where people could afford to buy in back then. These were suburbs that were almost satellite towns with how far out of the city they were. Yet people say, well, no, well, baby boomers screwed up their housing system. It's like, well, all the infilled suburbs now that go from Elizabeth back into the city, it's all suburbs. A lot of them showed up after the effect. I mean, you see the photos because the Queen actually came and opened, cut the ribbon on some of the stuff out there. So there's plenty of photos from when these suburbs were built, and you can see the amount of vacant land, how isolated they were back then, yet now they're not. But in order to find the equivalent housing, you've got to go a fair way out. And is it still there? Well, I don't know that people are building such small houses as often anymore. But the affordability is that's the trade-off. You can't live in a city as a first homeowner. Just not going to happen. Now, lack of infrastructure. Yep, there's a lack of infrastructure. I mean, they've shut down coal plants. They're trying to obviously bump up renewables. They even then pumped hydro as environmental effects, and in the tendency of not enough power stations, but then contaminated the planet with greenhouse gases. It's like what one follows from the other. Yeah, and the idea that university debts and HECS and things like this. Yep, the world isn't the same as it was in the 70s and the 80s. Sorry, not going to happen. And even the very few people who were fortunate enough to work jobs that had defined benefits schemes in terms of pensions and superannuation, those things don't exist anymore either. And they were largely government jobs. Politicians for a short period had access to one, and a few other public services as well. So yeah, there's a number of people out there, not many, who, irrespective of how much they paid into retirement, have a guaranteed income back out of it, no matter how long they live. So yeah. Yeah, $1,000 a week rent. Yeah, which is fair enough, complaining, and it's always also competitive. The market has really kicked off in the last few months. It was flat for a little bit. There's a house just down the road that went on the market. That was going to go to auction in a week. Sold ahead of auction probably a week ago, and every time they had an open house, and they had so many open houses, it realistically was only must have been like 2 weeks, if that, on the market before it sold. And to sell ahead of auction means that they've got an offer that they felt was very, very desirable. But yeah, the amount of time a house is sitting on the market, very low, which means, well, there's pressure on it, which means vacancy rates are going to drop and everything else. So, in the fact you've got a group of students looking to like share house accommodation, yeah, you're competing with quite a number of other people for a rental. Are they going to be as desirable long-term renters as, say, a family is, or somebody who's got permanent work? It's almost a straight up economic system. And is it unfair to them? Well, it means they miss out on accommodation, but you've got to look at them in terms of it's a competitive system, and if you're not providing the benefit to the vendor that another candidate will, then your chances are you're going to lose out. And so the idea that, okay, well, we're falling behind and stuff. Well, yeah, it's a competitive system. Sorry. But the fact that they've got such a strong application, good, awesome. You've got to have that strength to overcome the weaknesses of your application. Yeah, so and then retirement and superannuation and stuff. And the idea that it's difficult to get social things done. I mean, we've had many articles about the increasing level of isolationism in Australia, and loneliness epidemics. Yeah, people find it difficult to meet and everything else. It's just at the same time, though, there's a bit of you're digging a hole for yourself. Get off the dating apps. Get out into the real world. There are people out in the real world. There's plenty of places to go and meet people. I mean, I see things come up all the time. I'm new to the city. How do I meet people? How do I make friends? Clubs, sporting clubs. Go out, spend time doing things. Community groups. Yeah, it's. But it's difficult. Now, you're young, you got time, but yeah, it's the idea that you're competing at 20 against people. Yeah, but I mean, her points are fair though. That it shouldn't take working 3 jobs to try and secure accommodation, and that it's going to have an impact on well-being. Yeah. Migration. Boomers on the pension struggling. I'll stop blaming us. Well, see, it's not so much a blanket problem of generations. It's a class problem, really. It's a wealth problem. Yeah, you got plenty of poor boomers as well. So yeah, but it is unsustainable. Something's going to happen at some point.